everybody, I am Deepika from Learner Hub, a free learning platform where you can study physics, chemistry, maths, biology absolutely for free only at learnerhub.com. So students, in the previous videos, we covered chapter number 2 from class 10 biology ICSE, right? So now is the time to look into the next chapter, that is chapter number 3, genetics, some basic fundamentals. So let us start with the chapter. Have you ever visited hospital when any of your relative or your family member has delivered a child? So a very common talk that we hear during that time is whom this child resembles to, mother or father or say grandparents, right? So this is the very common talk. So all these resemblances, appearances, they all are governed by certain laws which we are going to study in this chapter, and they are by chance but yet they are governed by laws, right? So this is what we are going to study in this chapter. We are going to study about sex linked inheritance. We are going to talk about some Mendel's laws, but before that we are going to know some basics of the chapters, right? So we will start with the topic, what is genetics? So what is this genetics? So genetics is basically the study of heredity, how the characters they are passed from parents to the offspring, and what are the different laws which govern this genetics, right? So this is all what we are going to study in this chapter. So when we talk about genetics, there is a very common name that we hear is Gregor Mendel. So Sir Gregor Mendel, he is Sir Gregor Mendel, who was an Austrian monk, and he is now also called as the father of genetics, and he lived from 1822 to 1884, right? So he was born in a peasant's family, and he always had that interest in science and mathematics. So his early education was in a monastery. Further, he moved to University of Vienna, where he studied maths and science. Then he always wanted to be a teacher, but the luck was not in the favor, and he failed the exam of teacher certificate, right? So he could not be a teacher. Then what he did, he came back to the same monastery he got his early education from, and then there was a beautiful garden, and he always had that interest in how these characters pass, how this nature of forming new individuals this happens, and how parents and offspring they are of similar kinds, right? So he did all his experiments in that garden where he studied about the various laws, various characters, the transmission of characters, and now at this point of time they are called as Mendel's laws of inheritance. So these are very very important, and these laws tell us how the characters are being passed and how they are expressed in the offspring. Correct? So I hope this short story was clear. Now we will be talking about the two modern applications of genetics. So the two modern applications of genetics, the first one is genetic engineering. So it is basically a technique in which we are going to alter the genetic constitution of an organisms. And how we are going to alter it? We will be adding some new genes to its chromosomes. That's it, right? So just in case, say there is an organism whose some of say one gene is defective, so it is not functioning properly, so that will affect his complete body, right? His complete living, correct? So what is done, a new gene is introduced in place of that gene. That defective gene is replaced by the new gene, correct? So this is how that organism's body starts functioning properly. So how is it done? It is done with the help of this technique, that is genetic engineering. So such organisms whose genetic makeup is altered, so we call them as genetically modified organisms, that is GMOs. And the very first product to be produced by genetic engineering was human insulin. So how was this produced? So there was a bacteria, and into this bacteria genes were added, right? The genes for human insulin, the production of human insulin were added, and they produced this insulin. Correct? Clear? Now, why this technique is so much in demand? This technique is so much in demand because we are getting a desired product and we are getting it at a faster rate. Correct? We are getting it in large amount and we are getting this in faster rate, and this is very much used nowadays in medical science. Right? Clear? So genetic engineering is clear to everyone, right? So now we will talk about the second application. So now the second is genetic counseling. So there are some undesired traits that occur in some organisms, right? So nowadays this genetic counseling is very much in demand because parents are very much they very much know what are the problems and how we can solve them. So they are advised to consult a doctor, a genetic counselor basically, who helps these couples to avoid those undesired traits from the organisms. So it is very commonly seen in organisms which have these diseases, like, or say the history of these diseases in their family, like hemophilia, thalassemia and sickle cell anemia. So if in any case they have a family, and in their family history they have these diseases, hemophilia, thalassemia or sickle cell anemia, so they know that very well, right? So in those cases, parents or the couples, they usually visit the genetic counselor, they get all their tests done, and this is how the genetic counselor tells them how to avoid getting that undesired trait into their child. Correct? So these are the two modern applications which are very much helping us in medical science. Correct? So this hemophilia, thalassemia, sickle cell anemia, all of them are related to blood, right? So like hemophilia, it is also called as bleeder's disease, right? So it is also called as bleeder's disease. So this is a disease where if there is a cut on the skin, so the platelets don't come and clot this particular area. So in that case, that bleeding does not stop and there is a very much loss of blood from that organism, which is which can be very dangerous to the organism, to that person, right? Then thalassemia and hemophilia, they are also related to hemoglobin, right? Hemoglobin is what? It is a pigment which is present in the red blood cells of humans. Correct? So all these diseases are related to the blood and they are very much dangerous. These situations are very much dangerous in case of humans. Now, next, what we are going to talk is heredity. What is heredity? Heredity is the transmission of genetic characteristics from parent to offspring. So, how do we look like? We look like our parents, right? We have resemblance with our parents. Not we are actually the same as our parents, but we have resemblance towards our parents and we have resemblance with both of our parents. Correct? So it is basically the passing of characters from parents to the offsprings, right? Now, there is a statement which says, like begets like. Have you seen a dog? Have you seen their, say, pups, right? So how do they look? They look exactly like them. They have four legs, right? They have a tail, and some of them have the color of like their say mother or their father or the mix of both of them. Correct? So this is how do we look? We look like humans, right? We have two ears, we have two eyes, we have a nose, we have two legs, we have two arms, right? We have lips, we have two nostrils. Correct? So how do we look? We look like humans. correct? So this is how we know we look like humans, right? The same is the case. Just think of a bacteria, say lactobacillus bacteria. So how does this lactobacillus bacteria look like the lactobacillus bacteria, right? So it helps in the formation of curd, correct? So this curd, this lactobacillus bacteria keeps on growing, and this is how it resembles its parents. So if there is a bacteria, it keeps on dividing into two, right? So this division keeps on going, correct? So this bacteria, all of them, they look like the same, they are not different, correct? So this is asexual reproduction, correct? So like begets like we look exactly like our parents. Monkeys say offspring will look exactly like them, a horse offspring will look exactly like them, correct? So we have also seen trees, right? So there is sexual reproduction in trees also. So how do those trees look? They look exactly like trees. Do they look like humans? No, right? So this is heredity. But even though we have similarities with our parents, so the young ones always look like their parents, but still the variations are seen, and how they are seen and what is the reason behind them, this is what we are going to study next. Now, talking about variations in populations. Now we spoke about like we look like our parents, right? The offspring look like their parents, like begets like, correct? But still we see some differences from our parents, right? So what do we call them? We call them as variations, correct? So variations, they are the small differences among the individuals of same species. Like humans, the species is Homo sapiens, right? So this is, we are Homo sapiens. But if we just see within this human species, right, there are different tribes, there are different races, and we look very different. We have certain characteristics which tells us yes, we are human beings, right? Like two arms, two legs, two eyes, two ears, one nose, lips, right? And certain inner our systems, digestive, respiratory, right? So we will not go into that. But external features, so we know that we are humans. But if we look, say Indians look something different from the people who are living in Japan, people who are living in America. So we are different. We have these variations. So these small variations make up different tribes, different races, right? The same is in case of other animals. Say in case of a dog, so we have seen certain dogs which are very small, which are very tall heighted ones, which have so many hair on their body, others which have very small hair growth, right? So there are different kinds of dogs. So same is the case with cats, same is the case with other organisms, correct? So what are these? How is this possible? This is possible because of the variations, those small variations which come along with the passing of the characters, right? Now there are characters and there are traits. So what are the characters? These are the two important terms, characters and traits. So characters are the inheritable feature of an organism, and trait is alternative form of the character. Understood? Not really. Let us look into the examples, then you will be able to understand these characters and traits very clearly. Now talking about characters and traits, what are the characters? Characters are the inheritable forms, right? The inheritable features are the characters. For example, eye color is the character, hair shape is the character, eyebrows, hair on the middle finger, middle joint of finger is a trait, sorry, character. Then tongue rolling, hand use, all these are the characters. And what are the traits? The alternative forms of these characters, like if we talk about the eye color, whether the eye color is black or blue, say, right? So that is a trait. Which trait you inherited? What is the alternative form? Either black or blue or gray, right? So these are the traits, correct? So talking about hair shape, so are the hairs curly, or they are wavy, right, or they are straight, so these are the traits. Then eyebrows, either they are heavy, they are bushy, they are very thin, so these are the traits, correct. So same here on the middle joint of fingers, growth or no growth, is there a growth of hair over there or not. Then tongue rolling, are you able to roll your tongue or not, so that is a trait, right, and tongue rolling is a character. Then hand use, left hand, are you a are you a person who writes with the left hand, or you are dependent on the right hand, right? So these are the traits. The alternative forms of a character is a trait, correct. So let us do a little exercise understanding more about these traits. Now there are some characters and traits given here. Now we have to write C if it is a character and T if it is a trait, right? So curly hair, is it a character or a trait? So curly hair is a alternative form of a character. So what is it? It is a trait, right? Then rolling tongue. So you are able to roll tongue, right? So it is a character or a trait. So it is a trait, right? The quality of voice. So what is the quality of your voice? So what is it? It is a character, right? Left-handedness. So you are able to write and work very comfortably with the left hand. So what is it? It is a character? No, it is a trait, right? So the alternative form is right-handedness. Then coming on to the color vision. So what is it? Is it a character or a trait? So it is again a character, right? Now talking about chromosomes, which are the carrier of heredity. Why they are called as the carrier of heredity? Because chromosomes contains genes on them, and these genes have the characters which are being passed from one generation to the other, right? So they have these characters, they have these genes which are being passed from one generation to the another, correct. So they are the carriers of heredity. Now talking about chromosomes, so we have already spoken about the chromosomes in very much of the detail in the previous chapter. So we can actually study the chromosomes in detail by using high light microscope, where high power microscope, where we can actually get the pictures of these chromosomes and we can actually study them in detail, right? So where are these chromosomes? They are found inside the nucleus of the cell and they are able to divide, right? Now there is another term which is called as karyotype. What is this word karyotype means? It means artificially arranging chromosomes according to their size and shape. And how we can do this? When we get the pictures from this microscope, right? So we get the pictures from the microscope and we are able to arrange these chromosomes artificially, correct, based on their sizes and their shapes. So this is how now we know that we have 46 chromosomes, and now we know how do they look, correct? How like 22 chromosomes are 22 pairs of chromosomes, they are somatic, and the rest two are 6 chromosomes. Rest one pair is 6 chromosomes, the 23rd pair, correct? So this is called karyotype. Correct. Now, if we talk about an organism or we talk about a species, say we are talking about Homo sapiens. So, in every species, the chromosome number remains constant, irrespective of the race, irrespective of the tribe, but the chromosome number will remain constant. So, let's say humans. Right? So in case of humans, there are 46 chromosomes, whatever is the race, whatever is the tribe, but the number of chromosomes will remain 46, right? So there are some other, like dogs have 78 chromosomes, maize has 20 chromosomes. We are talking about number of chromosomes, not pair of chromosomes, correct? So a gorilla has only 8 chromosomes, onion has 16 and lion has 38, right? So irrespective of their tribes and races, we have the same number of chromosomes throughout a species. Simple and clear. So now talking about the chromosomes in homologous pairs. So if we talk about the chromosomes, did you notice what we studied in the last slide? all the chromosomes which were in an organism, in a species, right? So say in humans there were 46, in maize there were 20, in onion there are 16, right? So all of them are even, right? So none of them were odd, correct? So this means these chromosomes, they actually occur in pair. So talking about humans, we will simply focus on humans, okay? So the chromosomes, they always occur in pair, and in humans there are 46 chromosomes, which means there are 23 pairs of chromosomes in humans, correct? Now the two chromosomes in each pair are similar in size and shape. If we are talking about two chromosomes which are in pair, right? So these are the two chromosomes which are in pair. So these chromosomes will be of same shape and size, right? And then we are going to call them as homologous chromosomes. And from where did we get these two homologous chromosomes? One from each parent. Say this is from father and this chromosome is from the mother. So these two chromosomes, they came together from one parent each, and they became homologous chromosomes. They are of same size and they are of the same shape. So these chromosomes are called as homologous chromosomes. Correct? Clear and simple, right? So now we are going to talk about the main categories of chromosomes. So let us first talk about human chromosomes and how many human chromosomes have we studied. So we have studied, if we talk about in pairs, so there are 23 pairs of chromosomes, and if we talk about the individual ones, so we have uh, we have 46 chromosomes in a cell, correct? So now out of these 1 to 22nd pair, right? So there are 23. So out of them, first 22 pairs of chromosomes are called as autosomes. So these are the chromosomes which determine the general body features like the height, the complexion, say the eye color, or like these, the general body features, right? And the 23rd pair, so what are they called? They are called as sex chromosomes, or we call them as allosomes too. So what is their role? So they actually determine the sex of an organism, right? So determine the sex of an organism, correct? So these, if we try to look into the deep depth of like the structure of these chromosomes through these high powered microscopes, we'll be able to see these structures, right? So when we are talking about one pair, so that pair, so if we are talking about this one, right? So what we studied, these are called homologous chromosomes, right? So these are homologous chromosomes, and they are they are of same size and they are of the same shape, correct? So if you take a look of all at all the chromosomes, so the homologous chromosomes, they are of the same size and of the same shape, correct? So these are the first 22 pairs of chromosomes. Now talking about the last pair, so last pair will be either it will be XX or it will be XY, right? So if it will be XX pair of chromosome, so the sex of that individual will be a female, and if it will be XY, then the individual is going to be male, correct? So also X and Y chromosomes, they are of different kinds, they are not of the same kind as we see in the picture, correct? So I hope this is clear. Autosomes and allosomes, or allosomes we also call them as sex chromosomes, correct? So there are 46 chromosomes, and if we talk about in pairs, so there are 23 pairs of chromosomes in an organism, in a cell of an organism, right, of a human being, correct? So I hope this is clear. Let's move on to our next slide. So next topic is sex determination in human beings. So in the previous slide we studied there are 23 pairs of chromosomes, and out of them 22 are autosomes and one pair is sex chromosome. So this one pair determines the sex of a human being, right? So there is an egg, right? So what is it? This is an egg, and it will always have X chromosome in the egg, right? Now there will be a sperm, right? Now in case of sperms, it can either be X or it can either be Y, right? So either X or Y. So this means sperm decides the sex of the child. Now which sperm is going to fertilize the egg will determine the sex of the child. If this X goes here and fertilizes the egg, so this means XX will be the genetic composition, right? So this means the I mean so this means the born child will be a female, right? So the couple is going to have a daughter, right? Now the next is, if this Y goes and fertilizes the egg, so this means the genetic constitution is going to be XY. So this means the child is going to be a male, like a son, right? So very simple and very clear, right? So this means sperm, what type of a sperm, X or Y, fertilizes the egg will determine the sex of the child. Correct? Clear? So let us take a look using this flow chart, right? So there is a father. So what will be the composition of the father? So it will be XY, right? And there is a mother. And what will be the composition? The sex chromosome composition. So it will be XX, right? So from father, so the sperm will have either have X chromosome or it will have Y chromosomes. And in case of mother, egg will always have, eggs are going to be the same. They all will have that X chromosome in them. Correct? Now, which sperm fertilizes the egg, right? So when it is said that when after intercourse, there are like, when this sperm fluid, when this fluid is discharged into the female reproductive tract, so in that 50% of the sperms have X chromosomes and 50% of them have Y chromosomes. So this means there are equal chances of having a daughter and having a son. Correct? So here, if X will go and fertilize this X, so the child will be a female. If this X goes and fertilizes this egg, then again it will be a daughter, right? Now if Y goes and fertilizes this egg, so the child is going to be son. Now if this egg goes and fertilizes this Y X, then again it is going to be a son, right? So this means there is 50-50% chances, like 50% probability of having a daughter and having a son. Clear? Simple. So whenever sex determination questions come in your exams, and if it is like a long type of a question, you must draw this flow chart. It will make the answer very clear, very attractive, and you will fetch more marks, right? And also, needless to say, this topic is important because many questions have been asked from this particular topic in the previous years. So you have to focus on this topic. This is an important one. Correct? Now talking about the next part, that is chromosomes, which are the carrier of the genes. So do you remember the last chapter that we studied? So we studied about chromosomes. So inside the chromosome, they are made up of histones, histone proteins and DNA. And these DNA, this is a DNA segment which has protein, which have genes on them, right? So every organism, every species have a fixed number of chromosomes. So we have already studied about that. Now the characteristics which we get, like the hair color, this say the height, or anything, eye color, complexion, all of these, they are coded by genes, right? So these characteristics are the result of units which are called genes, which are present on the DNA. So this word gene was first coined by a genetist whose name is William Johnson, right? In 1909 he coined this term. Then if we talk about genes, so where are these present? They are present on the DNA segments, right? So these are the specific parts on the chromosomes which determine the heredity characteristics. Now when these genes are passed, they determine what kind of that human being will look like, right? What will be the eye color, what will be the hair color, what will be the complexion, how the height is going to be of that person. Correct? Now study says that there are nearly 19,000 genes present in a human beings. So these are the latest findings where it has been found out that there are 19,000 genes in human beings, and out of all those genes, the chromosome number 1 has the largest number of genes, right? So how many chromosomes we studied? We studied about 46 chromosomes in a cell, right? So out of them, chromosome number has the largest number of genes, which is around 2968, right? 2968. And the chromosome Y is said to have the fewest number of genes, that is 231, right? So these are the latest findings, so I thought I'll share with you. Now, genome. Now when we talk about a gene, so genes are present on the DNA, right? So there is a DNA molecule, and on this DNA molecule has these genes, but this complete DNA does not have genes, it does not code for proteins, correct? There are some introns, there are some exons. So these introns are the coding regions, these are the genes basically. But what is genome? Genome is the complete set of that particular DNA of an organism, including that introns, including those exons, the coding and non-coding regions, everything. Those come under genome. Correct? So there is a difference between a gene and a genome. So it is a full complement of DNA of an organism. So that is called as genome. Correct? Now, next topic is genes and their alleles. So what are these genes? These are specific sequences on a DNA molecule. Correct? Now, these genes, each gene have two alternative forms which have different expressions. So these are called as alleles. So every gene has two alternative forms of a character producing different effects. So they are called as alleles. Correct? Now, let us take an example of rolling your tongue. So throughout the class, so say there are 40 students. So out of 40 students, you have to ask every student to roll their tongue. So let's see how many of you can do that, and how many of you cannot. But how is it possible some of you will be able to do it and a few of them will not be able to do it? Because this is all because of your genes. So there is a chromosome, there are a pair of chromosomes where there is a pair of chromosome actually. So there is a pair of chromosomes which have this gene of rolling and non-rolling of a tongue, right? So if you have a rolling tongue, so this means you have a gene which is allowing you to roll your tongue, and if you are not, it means you have a non-rolling tongue gene, correct? So when we are talking about this, like you are able to do it or you are not able to do it, so there are two important terms, right, which we need to understand, that is dominant and recessive. So every trait, every gene has two alternative forms, and we call these alternative forms as alleles, right? Now there are recessive and dominant traits. Now when I say dominant, so when I am present, I am just suppressing your presence there. Correct? So what I am doing? I am dominating you. Right? So this is what these dominant alleles do. These dominant alleles just mask or suppress the action of recessive genes. So these dominant alleles are called as super ruling alleles, right? And there are recessive ones which are called as subordinate or submissive genes or alleles, correct? So it is a rule of genetics that whatever is dominant, we represent them in capitals. So just say rolling of tongue is a dominant allele, so we will represent it with capital R, and non-rolling is recessive, so we will represent it with the small r, correct? So this is how we are going to represent them. Now when we talk about these two types, dominant and recessive genes, so when, if say there are two alleles, so every character will have two alleles, right? So capital R, so that chromosome has both capital R, so this means they are homozygous dominant, right? So what are they? They are homozygous dominant. So these both will be able to express themselves when they are present together. Now there will be small r, small r. Now homo means same, right? So these are same, correct? Now what is it? This will be homozygous recessive, right? So we said in a genetics there is a rule, we represent a dominant trait with capital alphabet and a recessive trait with a small alphabet, correct? Now this will be, these two are same, so homozygous recessive, right? Now if say it is small r capital R, so in this case it will be heterozygous, I am writing in short, dominant, right? Now when this dominant, when this capital R is present, it is going to suppress the activity or the expression of this small r. So in this case only this will be expressed and this is not going to be expressed, correct? So this is the rule of genetics that you must understand, so that we can move further and we can study the Mendel's law, correct? So now we are going to discuss about genotype and phenotype. So in the previous slides we were discussing tongue rollers and non-rollers, correct? So we started the discussion with alleles, where we came to know about the different pair of characters, the different alternative forms of the genes which are called as alleles, and these different forms have different expressions, correct? Then we came to know about dominant and recessive alleles, and now we are going to talk about genotype and phenotype. So what appears might not be true, correct? So this is what we will learn, right? So we know that in genetics capital R, say, or the capital alphabet will represent a dominant trait and small will represent a recessive trait, correct? Now when we were talking about tongue rollers, so in that case either the genetic constitution can be, the genetic makeup can be capital R, capital R. It means both the alleles are dominant, so in that case they will be able to roll the tongue, correct? Now the other genetic makeup can be capital R, small r. So capital R, it means one is dominant and one is recessive. So in this case also, since this is a recessive trait, so this dominant trait will suppress the action of this recessive trait, and again it this dominant allele will be able to express itself, and the the individual will be able to roll the tongue, correct? Now the third one is, this is small r, right? So I'll write over here small r, where both of them are recessive, right? So both of them are are written in small alphabets, right? So this means this allele is also recessive and this allele is also recessive. So in this case only the recessive allele will show its appearance, correct? So in this case the individual will be non-rollers, correct? So if we look at the genetic constitution, so what appears might not be true, correct? So in this case we have both the dominant traits, and in this one is dominant, one is recessive, but in both the cases what are they showing? The individual is able to roll his tongue, right? So this is the genotype, which is the genetic constitution or the genetic makeup of that individual. So set of genes present in the cell of an organisms constitute the genotype. Then coming on to phenotype. So what is phene? It means to show, right? Now the expression which is shown is called as phenotype. The visible characteristics which are genetically controlled is called as phenotype, correct? So these are the two terms which you might get question from, genotype and phenotype. So what is the genotype? The genetic constitution, the genetic makeup or the set of genes which are present inside the cell of an organism. And talking about phenotype, so what is phenotype? It is basically the expression which is shown by the individual, correct? So that is the phenotype. Phene means to show. So whatever is shown, the visible characteristics of an organism tells us the phenotype. So now talking about the examples of inheritance. So we were taking example of rolling your tongue, right? So we have seen that maximum number of individuals can actually roll their tongues, and there are a few who cannot do that, right? So we will understand this using an example where there are two parents who can actually roll their tongues, and let's see what their children can do, right? So this is a very common like this is called there is one term which is called as pedigree analysis, right? So what we do, we have certain symbols that we take care while representing while doing this analysis, where this circle, right, so this circle will tell us that we are talking about a female, correct? When we are drawing a square, this means we are talking about a male. Correct? So remember, these are the symbols which are going to be the same throughout your syllabus, throughout your higher studies also. So circle represents a female and square represents a male, right? So these are the two parents who can roll their tongues. So they further had how many children? They further had these three children. So out of them, the circle shows that these two are girls and one is the boy, right? Now there is one more thing that we need to understand over here is this is the usual character when the symbol is hollow, right? So that means it is a usual character. Say if this is the symbol, say we are talking about a female, and there is some pattern, say there are some dots, or you can say there is some other pattern. So this means this particular female has a characteristic which is very rare, correct? But when this symbol is hollow, so this means this particular female is showing the usual character, right? And same is in case of the males, right? If the square is hollow, so this means that particular parent or the particular individual is showing the usual characteristic, but if it has some pattern inside it, this means that particular male has some different, or you can say a rare characteristic, correct? So now further they had three children, so out of the three, two are girls and one is a boy, correct? Now we can see the one symbol over here has some pattern inside, so it is actually filled, it is a solid shape, right? So this means this particular female has a characteristic which is rare, and rest two are able to roll their tongues, which is actually a usual characteristic. You try doing that. Are you able to roll your tongue? If yes, you have that usual characteristic, correct? So now as it is represented in this diagram, so this particular female, the daughter, has RR alleles, right? So both of them are recessive and she is a non-roller, correct? Now talking about this boy, so this boy is a ruler and he will either have capital R, which means both the dominant alleles, or he might have capital R, small r, which means either dominant, there will be one dominant allele and there will be one recessive allele. But since there is a dominant allele, so only dominant allele will show its expression and the recessive allele is not going to show the expression. Correct. Now coming on to the next one, again we have one roller, right? The girl is a roller, she can roll her tongue, so she will also have either capital R or capital R small r. So from this we came to know that the parents, either of the parents or both the not either of the parents but both the parents are heterozygotes, right? So we studied about two terms, one was homologous and the other one was heterozygous, right? So homo means same, so when we are talking about homozygous, it means both the alleles are same, either they are dominant or they are recessive. So either they will be capital R or small r, right? When we are talking about heterozygous, this means different, correct? So this will be capital R and small r, this is going to be this only, correct? So the genotype of these offspring shows that these parents, they are heterozygous, then only this condition is possible. So this daughter has received small r and small r from both the parents, and she is a non-ruler now. Correct? So let's see our next topic, where we are going to draw Punnett square, where this particular combination will be more clear to you. So let's see our next topic. So now we are going to draw a Punnett square, where we are going to see what is Punnett square and how we are going to draw and how we are going to find out the possible pair of alleles and what that represents. Correct? So what is a Punnett square? So Punnett square is basically, if you see this is a simple diagram, right? What is it? This is a simple diagram where we place the alleles of a particular trait alongside the square. So one side we will place the alleles of a particular trait of the female, and the another side the male parent, right? So mother and father. Correct? So in this particular Punnett square, what we are discussing, so last slide we discussed that both the parents were heterozygotes, right? So both of them had this combination of alleles for rolling and for rolling of the tongue, right? So in this case, what we are going to do is we are going to little twist the alleles of parents. Correct? So both the parents are rollers, they can roll their tongue, right? But in case of male parent, that is the father, he is homologous, which means he has the same alleles, right? So what does he have? He has the same alleles. So capital R, capital R. So this is capital R, capital R. So we are going to draw a square, divide it into 4, right? 4 boxes will be there. So we will write 1 over here, so the another allele over here. Correct? Then along this side, what we are going to do is we are going to write the female parent, right? The mother, the alleles in the mother. And here what we have considered, that this female, the mother, is a heterozygote, and but she is a roller, right? So what will be the combination? So it will be capital R and small r. Correct? Simple. Now let us complete this Punnett square. So it is very simple to understand. So this is the capital R, this is the capital R. So over here we will get capital R, which means this is a homozygous dominant, and this particular offspring will be a roller, tongue roller, right? So when I'm saying roller, so you must understand, you must have figured it out now that I'm talking about a tongue roller, because we are discussing this example from so long now. Next is again this is a capital R, this is a capital R. So what is the combination? So combination is going to be capital R, right? So again homozygous dominant, which is again going to be a roller. Excuse me. So next is capital R, small r. Correct? So when we are going to talk about capital R, small r, so the same we will be writing over here, and in this case it is heterozygous dominant, right? So heterozygous means both the alleles are different. So again, because there is a capital R which represents the particular individual can roll his or her tongue, so this individual is going to be a roller. Correct? Next will be capital R, small r. So the same is the combination over here. So heterozygous dominant, which is again a roller, tongue roller, right? So this means all the individuals, all the organisms or all the offsprings, they will be able to roll their tongue according to this Punnett square. So if parent is homozygous dominant and one parent is homozygous dominant and another is heterozygous tongue roller, right? So in that case all the offsprings will be able to roll their tongues. So this is what we figured out from this Punnett square. So the next one, we are going to talk about dominant and recessive forms of certain characteristics, right? So we have written certain characters. So first is the eye color. So what is the dominant trait? So this how we were able to figure out the dominant and the recessive trait after studying a lot of individuals and their alleles, right? So in case of eye color, the dominant trait is brown and recessive one is blue, because brown eyes we can see, like the every other person has brown eyes, but blue is recessive one, right? Even if you have that allele, but it is recessive, so your eyes are still brown, they are not blue, right? So next is tongue. So rolling of tongue is a dominant trait and non-rolling is a recessive trait. Then earlobe, so free earlobes are dominant and attached ones are recessive, correct? Then lips, so thick lips and thin lips, right? So thick lips are dominant and recessive are thin. Then color vision, so color vision, normal color vision, that like you are able to find out the different colors, you are able to distinguish between the colors. But in very rare cases, the person is not able to find out certain colors, especially that red and blue, right? So they are the color blind people, where they are not able to recognize those colors, correct? Now the next that we are going to discuss is some uncommon hereditary traits, right? So these are the three uncommon hereditary traits. One is polydactyly. So what is this polydactyly? So polydactyly is a situation where a person has some extra fingers in the hands or and in the toes, right? So that is polydactyly, and which is actually a dominant trait, right? Then comes albinism. What is this albinism? Albinism is actually when a person has no melanin pigment, and this is a very rare but a very serious condition, because that leads to many diseases. If there is no melanin pigment in the body, so that leads to many diseases. So this is a recessive trait, correct? Then the third one is camptodactyly. So camptodactyly is a condition where a person is not able to straighten the little finger. So this trait is also dominant, right? So these are the certain uncommon hereditary traits. Okay, so might be like the last one nobody even sees or nobody even bothers, right? So these are some of the uncommon hereditary traits. Now the next topic is sex linked inheritance. So this inheritance, as the name suggests, sex linked inheritance. So this means there are certain inheritances or there are certain appearances which are majorly or only due to the sex chromosomes, right? Either X chromosome or Y chromosome, right? So the appearance of a trait which is due to the presence of an allele exclusively either on X chromosome or on Y chromosome. So we know that in a female there are XX chromosomes, and in a male there are XY chromosomes, right? So these inheritances are exclusively limited to X and Y chromosomes. Correct? Now the next is X-linked inheritance. So what is this X-linked inheritance? The inheritance which is due to the X chromosomes. So there are certain disorders which are caused due to heredity and due to this X chromosome, right? So these diseases are like hemophilia and color blindness, and they are very much common in males, and these are due to the recessive genes which occur on the X chromosomes. Now we know that there are XX chromosomes in a female and XY in males, right? So say there is some color blindness disorder, there is color blindness gene that is on the X chromosome in a female. So it is just on the one X chromosome, right? So it is a recessive gene, right? So this is not a dominant gene. So in this case, this female is going to be normal, she won't show that color blindness symptoms. But if this case is with the male, right? So since it is a X linked inheritance, so this recessive gene is going to be where? It is going to be on the X chromosome. So now there is only one X chromosome and there another is Y chromosome, right? So this organism, so this male is going to show this color blindness
characteristic. So this person will not be able to distinguish between the basic red and green colors. Correct? Now, sorry, so now there are, these are the two X-linked inheritances which we will be studying. Now there is another case. Say this is again a female, right? XX chromosome. So I discussed, like, if it is a recessive gene, correct? So if it is on only one X chromosome, so that is fine, this female is going to be normal. But if this recessive gene is on both the X chromosome, then this female will also be colorblind. So this situation on female and this situation on a male makes them what? Makes them colorblind. Correct? So, first of all, let us briefly discuss what is color blindness. So, color blindness is basically an inherited disease where the affected individuals, they are not able to distinguish between red and green color. And the second one is hemophilia, where there is a risk of bleeding to death because the blood fails to clot. The blood is not able to clot, and due to which the organism, or you can say the person, if he or she has a cut on her body, so there will be no blood clotting and the blood will keep on flowing, and this situation may lead to the death of the individual. So now we were discussing all these combinations, right? So let us do some quick Punnett Square test and let us find out what will be the different conditions where a person can be colorblind and cannot be. Like, what are the parents' alleles, parents' say genetic composition, and what makes the offsprings. Now let us see the case number 1, that is father is colorblind but the mother is normal. So how are we going to write these alleles? So XX for normal mother, she is not colorblind, and say XC, I have written C for colorblind, you can also make it as a not, right? And Y, see, so this means that father is colorblind. So it is a X-linked disease, it is a X-linked inheritance. So this gene is going to be on the X chromosome, correct? And since a male has only one X chromosome and another is Y chromosome, so this, if that person has X chromosome which has this recessive gene, so that male is going to be colorblind, right? So so we'll write female on this side. So these are the alleles on the female or XX chromosomes, and for the father they have X which has this recessive gene and the Y chromosome, right? Now what will be the composition? So this will be X and XC, right? So this is like a carrier. Okay, so when we have this X and XC, so when the recessive gene is only on the one X chromosome, this means this particular female is a carrier. She is not color blind, but she is a carrier. This XC chromosome can sometime it can pair with the female, like it can pair with the Y chromosome and make the offspring colorblind, right? But in this case the child is normal, the girl is normal, but she is the carrier of the disease. Now the next one will be X and Y. So this is going to be a male, and that too a normal one, there will be no color blindness. The next situation is going to be again XXC. So again a female which is normal but the carrier of the disease. And the next will be XY. So from this Punnett square we have found out that the out of the 4 offspring, 2 will be daughters and 2 will be sons, right? And the daughters will be the carriers of the disease, but they are normal, and the sons, they are normal and they are not the carrier of the disease also. Correct? Clear? Let us see what is the case number 2. Now the case number 2, where mother is the carrier and father is normal. So when mother is the carrier, what will be the genetic composition? Mother is the carrier. So this means one X chromosome will not be having that recessive gene, but the another X chromosome will have that recessive gene, right? So it will be XCX, or we'll write it over here. right? Then the next one is the normal father. So XY chromosomes, X chromosome and Y chromosome. So there is no he's not the carrier and he's not infected with the disease. So let's see how the offsprings are going to be. Now, from here, it is going to be XXC, it is going to be XCY, this is going to be XX, and this is going to be XY, right? So, out of all the offsprings, how many are, how many sons and how many daughters? So, do you remember when we studied in sex determination in human beings? So, there are 50-50% chances of a couple having a daughter and having a son, right? And on whom it depends on the father, because mother is homozygous but the father is heterozygous. He has different chromosomes. So what type of a chromosome comes and fertilizes the egg determines the sex of the child, correct? So out of these four offspring, one daughter is going to be the normal, but she will be the carrier of the disease. The next one is the son who is infected with the disease, right? So he is going to be colorblind because his X chromosome has this recessive gene. Then next comes XX. So this is the female. This will be the daughter who is normal. Then next will be XY. This is the male child, son, and he will be normal. Correct. So out of the four, only one is infected, and out of the four, only one is the carrier. Right? I mean, obviously, this infected will also carry it forward, but she is the carrier, but she is not infected. The three will show the normal symptoms, and one will be infected. Correct? So let us see one more situation now. Now, the case number 3. So, the case number 3 says mother is carrier, father is colorblind. Simple. So, if mother is carrier, so it means she will have a carrier gene, this recessive gene on one X chromosome, and another will be the normal one, right? And the father is colorblind, so it is going to be this. So let's see how are the offsprings going to be. So the offsprings will be XC, XCY, XXC, X and Y, right? So out of the four children, two are daughters, two are sons, and the two offspring, one daughter and one son, they will be colorblind, and one daughter is going to be the carrier but she is normal, and one son is going to be normal, correct? So this is how we draw the Punnett square, and this Punnett square is very simple to draw, and also it makes us understand how if a father is a carrier, if the mother is normal, or whatever is the whatever combination we get, how the offsprings are going to be, what are the chances that a child of that couple is going to be infected with that particular disease. Correct? So I hope this is clear to you. Keep on practicing more. So we have just discussed about color blindness. You can also put some more examples and say some more combinations where mother is a carrier, father is colorblind, or anything, right? And try it with another disease, that is hemophilia, that we studied along with the color blindness. So I hope students, whatever we have discussed in this video is very much clear to everybody. Now in the next video we will be covering Mendel's experiments, and they are super duper easy, super duper important, and super duper interesting, right? So we'll meet in the next video. Until then, as you know, Learner Hub, free helper, best hair.